If you are seeing this, it is not an accident. Jung would not have called it fate either. He would have called it psychological readiness, a threshold. There are moments in life when the unconscious begins to press harder than usual. Not loudly, not dramatically, quietly. Dreams intensify, patterns repeat, old memories surface without invitation, emotions arrive without names. A pressure builds, not as panic, but as gravity. Something is forming beneath awareness, and the conscious mind feels it without understanding what it is. Jung observed that these moments rarely arrive during success. They come when the structures that once supported identity begin to fail, when what used to work no longer does, when meaning thins out and motivation feels hollow, when the mind keeps circling the same questions with no satisfying answers. Most people attempt to escape this stage. They distract themselves. They seek reassurance. They try to restore the old identity instead of asking why it is collapsing. Jung documented that this avoidance produces stagnation, neurosis, anxiety that resists solutions, depression that feels disturbingly lucid, as if it knows something the ego refuses to hear. But when someone does not flee, something else begins. Jung noticed that before every genuine psychological breakthrough, there is confrontation with the unknown within. Not a metaphor, not an idea, a living psychic presence, an interior force with its own momentum, its own intelligence, its own demands. The psyche begins reorganizing itself without asking permission from the ego. This is why the experience often feels ominous, not because something is wrong, but because something is real. What most people misunderstand is that breakthroughs do not feel like relief at first. They feel like disorientation, like standing between worlds. The old self is still present, but drained of conviction. The new self is forming, but invisible. The mind panics because it cannot locate itself in familiar coordinates. Jung observed that at this stage, symbols emerge spontaneously, images, fixations, dreams charged with emotional density, synchronicities that feel too precise to dismiss, a subtle sense that life itself has begun responding to an inner shift you have not yet consciously named. This is not coincidence. Jung documented that when the psyche reaches a critical threshold, the boundary between inner and outer experience thins. Events align not to comfort the ego, but to confront it. Reality begins to mirror the psyche's movement toward truth. You may feel something calling you forward while dismantling everything you once relied on. Relationships shift. Certain people no longer resonate. Desires lose their urgency. Ambitions feel strangely irrelevant. You begin to sense that many of your goals were shaped by adaptation rather than authenticity. This realization is not pleasant. It is clarifying. What terrified Jung was not madness itself, but the psyche's insistence on truth when it has been ignored for too long. The unconscious does not negotiate endlessly. It escalates, gently at first, then symbolically, then forcefully, through symptoms, conflict, and collapse. If you are seeing this, you may already feel that escalation, a growing intolerance for superficiality, for emotional dishonesty, for roles that require you to betray something essential. You may feel less interested in proving yourself and more drawn to silence, depth, and precision. This is not rebellion. It is alignment asserting itself. Jung documented that the psyche seeks wholeness, not happiness, not comfort, wholeness. And when conscious identity drifts too far from that center, the psyche intervenes. It destabilizes what is false, so what is real has room to emerge. This is why the process feels destructive before it feels liberating. The ego experiences it as loss. The psyche experiences it as necessity. You may notice that your emotional reactions have changed. Things that once wounded you no longer hold power. Meanwhile, subtler truths cut deeper. Small incongruences feel intolerable. Jung observed that this marks the shift from external valuation to internal authority. At this stage, clarity can feel isolating. You see patterns others deny. You recognize cycles before they repeat. You sense motives beneath words, not because you are superior, but because your attention has turned inward, where structure becomes visible. This isolation is not punishment. It is refinement. Jung noted that during this phase, individuals often feel as though they are shedding layers of themselves. Personas, once useful, begin to feel constricting. Social masks lose their charge. What remains can feel exposed, raw, and strangely powerful at the same time. What most people misunderstand is that power does not emerge through assertion. It emerges through integration, through the ability to hold opposites without collapsing into one side. Light and shadow, strength and vulnerability, certainty and doubt. Jung observed that the shadow does not disappear when ignored. It becomes autonomous. It acts out. It sabotages. But when it is faced consciously, something remarkable happens. The energy bound in repression returns to awareness. Instinct becomes intelligence. Emotion becomes information. This is the moment many fear, not because it is dangerous, but because it is irreversible. Once you see yourself clearly, you cannot return to innocence. You cannot unsee the adaptations you made to survive. You cannot unknow the intelligence that was waiting beneath your fear. You cannot go back to pretending you are smaller than you are. Jung documented that individuation is not improvement, it is consolidation. Borrowed values dissolve, inherited expectations fall away. What remains is earned, integrated, yours. If you are seeing this, you may already feel a strange calm beneath the intensity, a quiet knowing that what is ending cannot be repaired, and what is beginning cannot be stopped. This calm is not resignation, it is sovereignty emerging. Jung observed that when the psyche aligns with its deeper structure, anxiety transforms into focus, fear becomes information, desire becomes directional rather than compulsive. The individual no longer seeks permission to exist or justification to be. Life does not become easier, it becomes truer. The breakthrough is not explosive, it is a reorientation, a turning inward that changes how everything outward is perceived. You stop chasing meaning and begin recognizing it. You stop asking who you should be and begin listening to who you are. At this stage, Jung noted the emergence of an inner center, quiet, stable, unnegotiable, not loud enough to impress, but strong enough to govern. Decisions become simpler, boundaries feel natural, silence gains weight. You may notice that your presence changes, that you speak less, but with more precision, that you react less, but see more, that you no longer feel the need to convince, explain, or defend who you are becoming. If you are seeing this, the process has already begun. There's no need to rush it. The psyche moves at the pace of integration, not impatience. Let what is false fall away. Let what is real consolidate. This is not the beginning of becoming special. It is the end of being divided. And once this alignment completes itself, you will not need to announce who you are. Your presence will carry weight. Your stillness will be intelligible. Your choices will feel inevitable. Jung documented this state not as enlightenment, but as psychological adulthood. calm, integrated, sovereign. If you're seeing this, you're already on your way.